Now we just want to go on, talk a little bit more specifically about how the task force worked within Rich's organization called For People. And I'd like Rich actually to talk a little bit about how he was involved in the inception of the task force. I mean, without Rich, there wouldn't be a task force. So, Rich, over to you.
Oh, take myself off mute there. Thanks, Will. So to introduce For People. So we're a creative agency based in London and Amsterdam. We work across future strategy and vision. So we do a lot of future forecasting work and imagining what big brands could do next. Within that, we do brand identity, motion, film work. But where we started was around experience design. So product design, transport design, designing everything from sort of British Airways first class through to TVs and consumer electronics. So anything you can imagine would be in that experience kind of bucket. And as a company, to keep it simple, we are focused on designing for people. And by that, we mean that we're really focused on using sort of creativity as a powerful tool to have positive impact. So impacting around sustainability, we do a lot of work understanding how to get brands to move beyond focusing on net zero or kind of carbon neutral and trying to focus on climate positive and going further. So developing strategies that work both from a product level all the way through to strategic as a brand. And then the second kind of component is really around designing for the broader spectrum of people and trying to sort of champion diversity and inclusion. And I think it's on that point that we realized we were lacking in lived experience and we didn't have enough perspectives in the room to genuinely be able to talk to and design for that. And at the point we were thinking about this for a particular project that I'll talk about in a moment, Will came in and did a talk at For People. So we have what we call show and tells, where we have people come in and give us kind of a talk around experiences and things that they've done to kind of inspire the creative team. And Will came in, talked around his both his journey to being in a wheelchair, but also what he did beyond that, including kind of getting the government to change legislation and kind of taking a crusade to kind of get them to do that. So there was a lot in there that was kind of inspirational. At the end of that talk, Will and I then had a bit of a conversation and talked around this project that we're working on, which was around HS2, trying to design or come up with the interior concept and innovation concepts for passengers. And one of the drivers from our side, being For People, was to try and design that interior for everyone, and realizing actually that the wheelchair icon, as iconic as Will is, the wheelchair kind of is used in transport in particular as being like, we're designing for accessibility. If we can get a wheelchair on there, then we're solving the problem. But the reality is there's a much broader spectrum of disabilities to think about. And that's what we'd started to engage with. And so together with Will, we were trying to figure out like what are these different angles and these different lived experiences that we need if we want to design a better experience for people. And so we came up with these kind of categories that we needed to kind of get perspectives on. So visual, so partially sighted, color blindness or profoundly blind people, what's their experience of a journey. Physical disabilities, obviously wheelchair users, cerebral palsy or limited mobility. Dexterity, so we've got things like dyspraxia or locomotive kind of challenges, anything that's going to mean that it's a challenge to kind of interact with specifically. Hearing, so anybody who's profoundly deaf or partially deaf, trying to think about how does that experience, lived experience of that come to bear on what we should be designing and how we should be designing. And then learning disabilities, so Asperger's syndrome, cerebral palsy, these are kind of things that I personally am very interested in because of my members of my family. And then neurological kind of difference, so autism spectrum, dyslexia, and trying to think about these different needs that we need to think about in terms of the journey experience and understand the challenges so that we can design things that are better for them. And to Rox's point, if we can think about what would make the experience better for them, the reality is it probably makes it better for everybody on board as well. If you kind of solve an issue that they are struggling with, whilst it might not be an issue that an able-bodied person struggles with, it can improve the experience. And it's that marginal gains approach that we're really interested in, making lots of little tweaks that collectively make a big impact. And so together with Will, we kind of came up with this idea of, at the time we were calling it the Disability Avengers. It wasn't just the idea of seeing Will in Lycra that drove that. It was more about the idea of trying to pull together a team that had these different perspectives. And Will then took that and sort of went away to try and pull together a task force of people that we could talk to. And so with that task force, we then started trying to figure out, so this is something beyond the project we're about to show you, that we've been using it in a broader context. So as an agency, you have lots of different types of projects and lots of different sort of moments in the process. But if it's a big visioning project or kind of the beginning of a process, quite often we'll want to inspire the client and kind of give them insight that drives the process and the creative ideas that come out of that. So there's an opportunity with the task force to get them in at the very beginning to kind of set out inspiration of like, how could we be thinking, what are the things we could be designing, what are the problems we could be solving. And then the second one, this conceptual exploration. So this is kind of where the HS2 work that we did together focused, where we built a journey and we would then go through it and try and think about what are the concepts, what are the ideas that would solve the problems, or what are the things, the initiatives that we should try and kind of create here. There's a third area, which is once you've come up with those ideas and you've got something, design is an iterative process anyway. It's about trying something, realizing it doesn't work, trying again. It's about failing fast. Innovation is all about failing fast. So prototyping and testing with the task force. So if you've got, and this kind of applied to some of our other clients in packaging, for example, if you've kind of come up with a new concept and you want to test it, 3D printing it and then getting in the room with somebody with dexterity challenges and saying, okay, show me whether you can open this, or how would you interact with it so that we can design it so that it really does work. So it's about prototyping and testing and evolving a concept. And then finally, there's this sort of validation and endorsement where if you've created something and you kind of launch it into the world, it's about then getting people to engage with it, validating and proving that it works. And this isn't about us kind of doing high fives and kind of exploding potatoes and congratulating ourselves. This is about actually analyzing stuff and going, yeah, it could be better. We can go again. We can do this better and we can learn from it, and capturing those learnings so that you can feed them into the design process again for that client or for other clients. So this is the kind of idea from anybody that's attending this kind of talk and thinking from a consultancy perspective. It's you can actually get involved with a task force at different stage in the creative process. And then to Will's point earlier, there's ultimate flexibility. I mean, Will has loads of energy for this, as do the rest of the task force. And so they're really up for trying to figure out with you as a client, how do we work together? And that can be a half-day discussion, like just having a Zoom call together and talking through some of the things you're looking at and getting a perspective. It could be a sort of in-person workshop where we kind of work together and we kind of do a bit of pre-planning for that. Or we have talked about kind of doing longer engagements, like a 1-week collaboration where we actually go and visit, for example, a hotel we were talking about, trying to get the task force to attend, stay there together so we can actually see in real life the challenges that we're facing and trying to think of better solutions for how we can design that experience to accommodate a wider spectrum of people.